trees. But in the beginning of 1945, at the end of World War II, Czechoslovakia was allied with Great Britain, France, and the United States. Great Britain and the United States had planned an air assault on the city of Dresden in Germany. It's about 80 miles north of Prague. There were two American pilots that misnavigated and thought Prague was Dresden. And they accidentally bombed the city on two separate occasions. And this is one of the buildings that was hit. So this section was completely destroyed from the bomb. And the impact from the bombs caused significant damage to the mechanics of the astronomical clock. So since 1945, the government's been doing minor repairs on the clock because it was struggling to keep time accurately. But last year, they were concerned for the structural integrity of the tower. So they covered the whole thing, did a reconstruction from the inside out. The tower was completed about 3 weeks ago, and now they're doing work on the clock. So that is why you can't see it today. But in the square, I told you about the first defenestration of Prague. The Hussites met with the Catholic leaders, Catholics out the window, they died, Wenceslas died, 200 years of a great time. At the end of these 200 years, the Habsburg Empire came into rule Bohemia. And the Habsburgs are very conservative Catholics. They said not only was the Catholic religion and doctrine the best one, but they said it was to be the only one. So the monarchy met with the heads of the church, and together they wrote a letter that they sent to all other religions. This letter said they had to stop building their holy places, they could no longer congregate, and everyone would be forced to convert to Catholicism. Now, the Hussites were at this point a part of the Protestants, and they were not happy. They fought 15 years for their freedom that they had enjoyed for 200. So they started another war. But this time fighting lasted for about a year and a half in Bohemia. At that point, the leaders of the Protestant church went to the castle and asked to speak to the king. King said, no, I don't even care about your argument, it's just simply not relevant. But if you want, you can speak to two of my priests. They're waiting for you in the top of the tower. You know how it went, yeah? Two priests out the window. But not just the priest, their assistant running away in the corner, threw them out for good luck as well. 3 men fell 21 meters. But this time, they all survived. Again, two versions to the story. The Catholic Church said angels grabbed them by the shoulders of their cloaks and slowly lowered them to the ground. They were saved by the grace of God. But the real story, there was a huge pile of horse manure at the base of the window. And since they were priests and they landed in it, it's the first time in history we have a written record of the phrase, holy shit. Now, unlike King Wenceslas, who had a heart attack and died when you heard about the defenestration, the Habsburg Empire was furious. They sent their men and arrested the 27 leaders of the Protestant church and put them in jail for 6 months. Then in June of 1621, those 27 men were brought right in front of Old Town Hall. The first 23 had their heads cut off. The last 4 were not of a high enough social class to die in such an honorable way. So instead, they were hanged from a beam that extended out of the top window of Old Town Hall. The king then took 12 of those severed heads, put them in an iron basket at the top of the tower above Charles Bridge, and they remained there for 6 years. This was to tell the rest of the population to never mess with the Catholic Church and never mess with the monarchy. So fighting in Bohemia pretty much ended, but it sparked war around the rest of Europe. Does anyone know of the 30 Years' War? A couple of you, okay. Outside of World War I and II, that was the bloodiest war in the history of Europe. About 7.5 million people died. A lot of them died fighting in battle, but most people died from the different diseases and plagues that spread across Europe because of the low levels of hygiene at the time. So it started out as a war for religious freedom, and 30 years later, people got exactly that. In June every year in the Czech Republic, we have 2 national holidays. So about 2.5 weeks ago, the first one is Jan Hus Day, in honor of Jan Hus, the green guy. People call him the grandfather of the Protestant Reformation. His writings, his ideals later on had a significant influence on Martin Luther. The day after that is in memory of the 27 men that were killed in front of Old Town Hall. Behind the fence, when there's no construction, there are 27 white crosses in the cobblestones, one for each man that was killed in June of 1621. So that catches up to middle of 1600s. Next, we're going to go to the banks of the river, but I have a few recommendations on the way. Next main stop, I'll tell you about Kanye West, the moon landing, and the Rolling Stones, all a part of Czech history. That way.